Generic greetings and welcome to Science Insanity, a channel dedicated to bringing my love of science fiction and all its nerdiness to you, the viewer. Along for the ride and serving as comedic relief is the sci-fi mostly illiterate and my co-host and friend Steve. Say hello, Steve.
Hello.
Wonderful. Thank you for literally throating the mic while you did that. Today we're going to be covering...
I had to mess it up a little bit for you, you know? You can't make things too easy on you.
Today, we are going to be covering the best faction in Battletech, a deeper dive into it compared to the overview we did as, like, our first flagship video. We are going to be talking about the Capellan Confederation. Are you ready, Steve?
Alright, I'm out of here.
Disconnect immediately. So
I would, but you won't be happy with me when I rejoin the channel.
No,
so.
I will not. That voice cue is incredibly annoying. While we have covered the inner sphere in loose detail, I figured it would be a good idea to actually go back and discuss some of the different factions with a level of detail, respect, and, okay, not respect, but memes that actually fits their significance. So, the Capellan Confederation, North Korea in space. But first, before we get into it, if you'd like to support Side directly, check out our Patreon, and if space shekels seem in short supply, consider liking, subbing, sharing the video all around, since every little bit helps and is appreciated. The line must go up. I want to get to 20k by the end of the year so that I can show everyone else around me that I am better than them with my internet credit. And if you'd like to join a small but growing community of like-minded turbo nerds, check out our Discord server, link down below. Also, I stream. We stream? Is it we stream now?
I stream, we stream, we all
stream together sometimes, mainly on the weekend. This Saturday at 1 p.m, me and Steve are going to be going live on Twitch. We're going to be playing a co-op survival shooter disaster bonding game, whatever, and we're going to be struggling to actually get through it while working together. So, mandatory begging and all that done, you ready to dive into the most hated and most memed on faction in maybe all of Battletech?
No.
Okay, fair enough. I guess the video's just over then.
Alright, we'll see y'all next week.
Alright, later guys. Aside from the memes, what do you actually know about the Capellans?
North Korean space. That's all I got.
Well, I mean, you tried.
Definitely didn't hear that earlier.
Indeed. So, let's start right at the beginning, as all good things do, back on Terra, before humanity managed to do the big think and throw itself across the stars. So, the Capellan Confederation originated from Eastern Russia, China, and much of the Asian Pacific. So, Space North Korea isn't actually accurate, but it is technically correct, which is the best kind of correct, and why it's stuck. The Capellan state is also the youngest of the great houses, and the one with arguably the most fractured start, and the greatest chance to just die immediately on arrival. But somehow they managed to pull through.
Should've.
While most of the great houses were formed due to the threat posed by other outside forces, they were also formed of like-minded people, both in terms of culture, but also morals and beliefs, for the most part. The Lyrian Commonwealth, for example, Steiner, all of those lovely German memes and haha big assault mechs, they were formed by merchants, corporations, trade groups, and heavy industry, right? So, leading into its focus on resource extraction, trade, and industry, it became the economic powerhouse of all of the inner sphere great powers. All of those minor factions that formed it up eventually became the major and minor noble families within the great houses. Steiner might be the most powerful ruling noble family, the de facto kings of the Lyran Commonwealth, but the various other founding members are still hanging around, kinda like the duchies or dukedoms and baronies or whatever that pledge fealty to the king. The Capellans, not exactly, not so much. They're kind of a chaotic melting pot of a whole bunch of different ideas and philosophies all mangled together in one zombie-like state. Like I mentioned, the Capellans are the youngest. All of these sub-provinces that formed up the Capellan Confederation generally did not like each other, and were relatively hostile on an ideological and personal level, from the leaders to the people to the actual societies we're in, and generally held loose alliances with one another because all of their neighbors were even worse. I.e., the Free Worlds League kept trying to steal their territory, and the Federated Suns kept blowing up their worlds on the border. So when you have that as your neighbors, you tend to take whatever you can get as a friend. And even after joining together as a state, the Capellans, they really did not do well. Did they suffer. For example, some of these pre-Confederation nations were the Capellan hegemony, which was the most powerful, so it got to name the new nation, woo, bigger stick rules, and others smaller ones like the St. Ives Mercantile League. And that name is important because they will split off from the Capellans into the future because they did not like the Capellans. They decided, fuck this shit, I'm going to leave.
The correct action that they could have taken.
Pretty much. I mean, the Capellans were kind of falling apart by that point, so they were like, whatever, I'm just going to jump ship when everything's on fire, might as well.
Were they ever, like, really together, though? Like...
And like I had mentioned before they had unified, the Federated Suns especially would constantly be pressuring their border worlds of that neighboring nations, conducting peacekeeping operations or just outright invading them. And while the Free Worlds League was...
Surely they actually kept the peace with the peacekeeping operations, surely.
Oh yeah, don't worry about it. It's going to come up later. The Federated Suns are indirectly responsible for creating the Capellan state to begin with, so it's pretty funny, but we'll get to that in a second. While the Free Worlds League on the other side of the Capellans was less aggressive about it, they too were squeezing in towards the center of the Capellan zone, which is what that region was called before it became an actual nation. The last straw that caused the formation of the Confederation, there's going to be so much goddamn alliteration in this episode. So on Capella itself, the throne world, there was an enormous amount of chaos. Noble families and ruling elites were plunged into chaos. It was like a pseudo-civil war going on. People couldn't figure out what the hell was happening. And so the Federated Suns, in their infinite wisdom, decided, hey, this is a chance to get free shit, and rushed an entire army towards the planet in peacekeeping operations, totally not to secure the entire upper leadership of an entire micronation.
They should have sent more.
I don't think they ever got there because all the other states proceeded to immediately shit their pants. And the prospect of having the Federated Suns take over the largest and most powerful of the Capellan Zone nations without even firing a shot, like just rolling in and taking over, was something they couldn't stomach at all. It would mean the complete death of all of the other ones around them because the Capellans were pretty much holding everything together by that point. So they did manage to form a coalition, which a few years later would sign into being the Capellan Confederation proper. But the turmoil and the sense that all of their neighbors would immediately jump in to try and devour them alive if they had the chance left them with an unbelievable sense of paranoia and a near constant and insane focus on their defense against all outsiders. I mean, they're not wrong, everyone does want them dead, but still it's a little much.
I mean, is it really?
I mean, considering even after unifying, every time they went to war with the Fed Suns, they lost like 10% of their territory. Maybe, I think it's a little justified.
No, I think it's good.
It just, oh my god. We're gonna get into it later, but shit, man, the Capellans get absolutely fucked. So the Capellan Confederation was formed expressly to defend against aggression from the other great houses. And there are a lot... Like we mentioned, a lot of Capellan apologists and sycophants that'll say that, you know, oh, it's great, they did fine, but no, they sucked. Let me get you those maps, actually. We'll do it right now. Here we go. Okay. So that is the Confederation during the Star League. It's pretty chunky, as I'm sure you can see. It's still kind of a small, crippling chunk of the inner sphere pie, but it's doing pretty okay. I think we can agree. It's girthy. Yeah, after the Star League fell, you know, you can see some inroads from the other nations. They took a few worlds, but the Capellans focused mostly on, you know, taking over Terran hegemony worlds, rush in there after the Star League fell, and just take all that shit for free, because they didn't really have to fight for it. So, you know, fair enough, right? They've embiggened yet again. What do you think happens immediately after this?
Reduced to ashes.
Not quite. It is a hilariously slow and painful death. But this map is all the gray areas they lost. That's the next succession war. They lost a lot of territory. And what do you think happens?
They seem to be bleeding some. I don't know.
Yes,
bandage that up or something.
They're bleeding quite a bit. And this is the next time it happened. They're suddenly bleeding a lot more. And do you notice some of the very, very unfortunate geographical issues that have now cropped up?
Hey, you look like you're about to be split in half up there at the top.
Yeah. There's 2 worlds. Only 2 that would have to be conquered, and then you cut a third of the Capellan Confederation off from the rest of it. And you see those giant, indefensible salients that, like, dong sticking out in the middle. It's completely surrounded by Fed Sun's territory, and that's what remains of the St. Ives Mercantile Pact. In fact, here, let me get you the next map to show you exactly what happens. Everything went wrong.
You appear to have lost a little bit there, bud.
It's so good. Look, you know all those people that are like, oh, just look at the map to see who's winning the Ukraine war. It's like, yep, we're looking at the map. Doesn't seem like the Capellans are doing so hot. They have a little bit of bullshit later on where they manage to come back almost from the dead, and it's pretty plot armory garbage. So you can see here they get back to almost where they used to be before the unfortunate times happened. So there's a little bit of shenanigans there, but we'll get into why that's ridiculous later. By the way,
did they call the shenanigans, or like did the shenanigans just happen? Because
to
my knowledge, you have to like call the shenanigans before they can actually occur.
It's a little bit of both. It's kind of like the writers going, well, we can't kill the Capellans off because they're like 1/5 of the Inner Sphere's factions, so we need to invent a way for them to keep surviving. And they just kind of went, well, I guess a genius comes by to save them. Take a wild guess what the genius's name is, by the way.
Is it Stefano Maris?
No. This is what? This
You're
is
telling
like
me that man wasn't a genius?
This is like 400 years after he died.
Yeah, he wasn't resurrected?
No. I mean, it's got China influence. Come on, take a wild guess. Who's
Sun-Tzu?
Yeah. Yes, it is. That's the guy's name.
No.
I'm not shitting
you. No. No.
They brought the Art of War guy back to save the Capellans.
Oh my god.
It's so good, man. This faction is so bullshit. Everything about it should have been wiped off the map, but no.
I hate them even more now. Get me out of here.
Yeah, it's great. All the factions have plot armor to a degree, but come on, guys. You cannot seriously tell me that the China-inspired faction brought Sun-Tzu back to somehow save... Like, just come on, guys. For fuck's sake.
See, it's actually Sun-Woo now. They had to change the name a little bit for copyright reasons.
Oh, God. Yeah, so we gotta move on. So, as you can see, the Capellans generally don't do very well in conflict. They kind of get their shit kicked in every time they go to a serious war. And one of the biggest problems that the Capellans have, and the reason that they suffer so badly in open conflict is, how do I put this? They have a bit of a size problem. So, during the foundation and early years of the Star League, the Capellans had a small but very efficient industry, a large population for their size, and a number of well-fortified and geographically easy-to-defend borders. During this time, a lot of the less savory elements of Capellan society, like, state-enforced mandatory slavery, being stripped of all your rights as a punishment, having your property, children, and livelihoods taken from you by the state, being press-ganged into military service, being forcefully relocated to other regions, and more, which we shan't get too into, but they were overall not super prevalent.
I think you just meant all of it. I'm not sure, but...
Okay, yeah, so a lot of those wonderful Capellan memes weren't really a thing yet. They existed, but they were kind of like an open secret under the table that nobody really talked about. Unfortunately for the Capellans, with the death of the Star League and the start of the Succession Wars, the Capellan state found itself beset on all sides. They had done a wonderful job of making everybody hate them, and so the Free Worlds League and the Fed Sons took every opportunity to dick with them and steal their territory. While it had managed to conquer a number of worlds from the Terran hegemony, like we said, that early expansion, most Terran worlds were already stripped of resources, reliant on outside import to fuel their industry, and made of not exactly loyal populations. While most other great houses could absorb these issues and reap the benefits of those worlds anyways, the Capellans not so much. Over the next few centuries, the Confederation was slowly chipped down on all sides, like you can see. The, I believe, 4th map is the one that's most common canon for 3025, where they've got all of these gangly salients and all of these that terrible geography. All of this terrible territory being lost in all of these constant wars meant that a lot of the heavy industry and manufacturing worlds that the Capellans had were either conquered or heavily damaged and rendered unusable. Worse, though, is that the Capellans were now facing the nightmare scenario for any military planner. They had all kinds of border territories which were easy to cut off, easy to encircle, and a lot of their inner worlds, which weren't particularly fortified, were now relatively vulnerable if the Federated Suns or the Free Worlds League decided that they were going to push deeper into Capellan territory.
I thought like the military nightmare here was just like logistics in this.
Oh, don't worry. The Capellans have arguably the worst logistics of all the factions. Okay. It's not pretty. They basically solve a lot of their military issues by throwing money at the problem, which we'll talk about a little bit later. At this point, because of the succession wars, Capellan society was undergoing a little bit of an issue. Now, before, non-citizen pseudo-slaves were a minority. They were called servitors. Now, they made up the majority of all people living in Capellan space, right? This was due mostly to necessity. Servitors were forced to do all of the hard and often very dangerous labor in Capellan society. They were often also used as slaves by another name for anyone with the clout, political or monetary, to get their hands on them. Their lives were often short, miserable, and backbreaking, as non-citizens are entitled to, well, nothing. No healthcare, no rights, no respect. This is
as it should be.
Oh god. This is the absolute worst of the worst in the Capellan caste system. If this is where you end up, just die. It's probably a better choice. And considering the majority of people do end up here, I'd give you like a 1 out of 3 chance to avoid this fate. Have fun. Next up, you have what's known as the commonality. These are essentially the average citizen, skilled and unskilled. They're entitled to medical care provided by the state, as well as stipends, bursaries, and grants to assist with their living conditions depending on where they are and what they do. They also have some level of control over the state, unlike in most of the other great houses. Since the Capellans have so little industry, and their population is minuscule compared to their rivals, if the workers of a world strike or demand better wages and refuse to work, often they can force compromises from the ruling elite, since a loss of production can spell the loss of entire Capellan worlds.
There's no way that people would strike because they ain't being paid enough. No way.
No, that's
just
very
illogical.
Real. That happens fairly frequently, because the government goes, oh god, we need like 10 million more battle mechs, quick, everyone, 23-hour shifts, 7 days a week, go, and all the people are like, abso-fucking-lutely not. The way that the Capellans go about doing it is the workers will strike for better pay, and so they'll give them better pay, but then they'll cut back on their benefits to basically make it so that nothing has changed, and they have to pay more for shit anyways. And then they go, and then they go, we need more benefits. So they give them the benefits back, but then they increase the working time, and they're like, we're working too much. So then they go, okay, fine, work less, but we're paying you less now, and then cycle repeat forever. It doesn't matter how much they actually try to fight for better conditions, they're always jockeying something going wrong. And even though the standard of living is pretty alright for this class of people, the reality is most of them will suffer from broken families and missing relatives. That's extremely common. Capellans have large families, and that's because most of them will honestly end up dying in combat after being drafted, fail their citizenship test, and be made a servitor and then shipped off to wherever they're needed, or be forced away from home if your skills are needed somewhere. Basically, any station in life that's not the bog standard middle ground basically means that the state will throw you to the ass end of wherever they need you. And even if you do hold to the bog standard that your family's already at, there's a really good chance that some of you will just be drafted to go fight, because the Capellans are constantly under siege from every direction. Life is not easy for the average Capellan, even the ones that do become citizens. Moving up from there, we get to into the artist caste, and yeah, artists actually have their own, but don't worry, we'll be fast. What do you think being an artist in Capellan space means?
You get to draw for people.
Technically correct, the best kind of correct, I appreciate that answer. But in reality, it's either you live dirt poor forever, starving artist style, making the art you want to make, or you surrender all creative freedom and basically become another propagandist towing the state line. If you agree to sell your soul to North Korea in space, the government will pay for all your living expenses. They'll even provide you some luxuries. And hell, they'll even expose all of your art for you across the Confederation. They'll display it in galleries. They'll broadcast it over radio and television and all of that shit. And the only price you pay for that is never being able to make what you want or anything that's actually subversive, and having a member of the secret police go over everything you do to make sure that you yourself are not being subversive. A good trade, don't you think?
That's like one of the best deals of all time.
Exactly, it's
This is
pretty
certainly
good.
one of the deals in the history of trade deals.
And this actually has quite a bit of an effect on Capellan society because they draw from so many different cultures. They're a huge melting pot of all the ideas around them. Because they're not super able to stand on their own, they have to import technology and ideas and mech warriors and stuff from all over the inner sphere. And they're very, multicultural and like a melting pot. But the propagandists always, all of their culture and art has this absolute worship of the state baked in, and that the state can do no wrong. So while they're very multicultural, every single one of those cultures is based on the foundation that you must serve the Capellan Confederation. And once we move on from some of those artists and their caste and all the filthy creatives that get to live down there in the slums, we move on to the intelligentsia. Do you know what these guys are?
The intelligent.
Technically, this actually consists of not super high educated people. Like, it does contain them as well, but it basically contains all of the quote-unquote cultured and quote-unquote educated people in Capellan society that keep things functioning and stable. It's engineers, doctors, priests, scientists, teachers, all of that stuff. Everyone responsible for keeping the mechanisms of the state authority running and keeping the populace under control.
Yeah, all the people that don't matter.
On top of all the rights and privileges that regular scum-sucking citizens get, these guys are actually given some real freedom and actual luxury. This is like the 1% of Capellan society. Not only are members of this class often given free land if they're like scientists and stuff, give them a mansion if they're really good at their job, but even teachers and priests and stuff of local congregations will be given a reasonably decent house just from the state. Here, have a nice house. They're given luxuries and benefits as well as huge yearly salaries to spend on whatever they want. Big Brother also enforces respect to be given to this class, by the way. It is societally, it's societally unacceptable to disrespect or demean anybody that lives in this class. Off with your head if you try, kind of thing. It's also to the point where some of them get like pseudo-noble titles. They don't have like the political clout, but if you're a good enough engineer, they'll like knight you as a lord or something. It's really funny. So you have all of these nerds walking around being like Duke and Duchess and Lord and Noble this, that, or the other. It's great. It's the Capellan equivalent of established titles. It's a completely worthless noble title that someone sold you.
Not fucking established titles.
So members of this social class are allowed to take vacations off planet, go traveling, move to a different world, or just stay where they are if they want to. As long as they stay productive, the state just kind of shrugs and lets them go and do what they want, where they want, as they please. And when I say the state just shrugs, I mean they spend inordinate amounts of money to assign a FBI agent to every single one of them. You get your own member of the secret police following you around when you get to this class of privilege. Because now...
You'd really just be stealing ideas from the current day.
Absolutely. I mean, come on. Once you get to this level, you're actually a threat to the state, so you must be watched at all times.
True. Truly.
And lastly comes the ruling elite. Officially known as the dictatorship caste. No, I am not joking. The dictatorship caste is absolutely tiny. It's essentially like the single family or sometimes the single person ruling a world in Capellan space. The councils they make up to advise the members of House Liao in power also count here, and the supreme dictator from House Liao. It's like a few hundred to a few thousand at absolute max. And during some of the purges that the Capellans did, because of course, lol Lamau Space Russia, they basically got rid of like 80% of this cast of people because they were subversive, or they weren't towing the line, or they had the ungodly opinion of maybe surrendering to the invaders rather than dying to the last man in nuclear fire.
That's a bold outlook there. We can't be having that. Get rid of them.
Yeah, so he's pretty much the de facto king. Like, this class are the de facto kings that live within the Capellan Confederation, and they have all the power, all of the influence and all of the dickishness that you would expect of someone in that position.
It's good to be king.
Let's move on to the Capellan's economy. What do you know about this, with where the inspiration was drawn from real life? What do you think it is?
In terms of economy, we have no economy.
You are partially incorrect. So, it is a classic Soviet-style command economy. I'm assuming you know what that is.
Yes.
Yes, okay, good. Something stuck in from all the Red Scare propaganda. So it somewhat bounces back and forth between a demand-driven market to utterly command and control from on high. The reason this is done is because the Capellan economy is so small compared to everything else around them, like we've talked about, that if they don't make incredibly good use of all the resources they have, there's a really good chance that things are going to go horribly wrong. They have to be efficient or they die. So the Capellans, during times of peace and plenty, will generally let things smooth out a little bit. They'll allow the market to kind of dictate production. They'll allow corporations and industries and factories that aren't important to rebuilding the military and stuff from whatever ass-kicking they got last month. They allow those to basically just do their thing, right? But when they really need it to, the Capellans will dictate everything from how much food people get, to what you're going to be working on, to where you're going to be working, to what's going to be produced, what's legal to be produced, and all of that.
It's legal to be produced. Oh God, they're
Yeah.
regulating the drug market. They're fighting the war on drugs.
Oh no, it gets worse.
Oh,
They're
God.
fighting the war on obesity.
No.
Yeah, so there was a point in the Capellans' history where they were getting so beyond fucked up by all of their neighbors, like they were about to die, where they basically said, no more consumer goods, no more luxuries. It is illegal to produce any of these, and if you do produce them, you die. Everything is going straight into the war effort. What's that? You want to produce your stupid sugar soft drinks in your stupid aluminum cans? No, die. All of your stuff is going for the war effort. You're making bullets now. What's that? You're making air fryers? No, you're making grenades. What's that? You're making literally anything that's not like water and rice and bread. Too bad, die. All to the war effort.
Trifecta: water, rice, and bread.
It's the only things you need to survive, really.
Truly.
So there was a point, which map was it? The map, the second last one, where they're getting absolutely obliterated. This is when they actually put in their...
The one where they turned into Minnesota?
Yes, the one where they turned into Minnesota.
Okay.
That's where they institute the ban on all non-military production. It does have some incredible bonuses, though. On the one hand, they can switch production and capacity pretty much immediately. Unlike in real life, where a lot of more free economies can take quite a bit of time to respool, retool, and work up all of their stuff to be producing whatever's needed, the Capellans can just go, nope, you're making tanks today, and then if you're not making tanks today, the manager is going to be dying every progressive day until you start making tanks. So... It's very effective at getting what needs to be made, and then getting it to where it needs to be. It can be extremely efficient at moving people and resources around as well. There's one case where the Capellans made a new mech, the Vindicator, and pretty much immediately after, they were getting it shipped out, at least on Battletech timescale, pretty much instantly to exactly the battlefields that they needed it at for reinforcements. So this style of economy can be incredibly effective at that. But when managed badly, you have mass, dozen million people starving. So it's got its pluses and cons.
I'm only seeing pluses here, man.
Oh yeah, that's true. If millions of people starve to death, you don't have to feed them. So net food gain in the long run.
Exactly.
You can turn them into Soylent Green. The Capellans are also the butt of jokes in universe as well as out of universe. This is more comedic relief. I couldn't figure out where to put this, but I really wanted to talk about it because it's fucking hilarious. So, you're about to hear about the great dinner plate scandal that marked the start of the Fourth Succession War. You ready for this?
Okay.
So this is great. So, going back to that map where like half of the Capellans get conquered, behind the scenes, the Federated Sons and the Lyran Commonwealth were planning to marry their heirs and combine into the Federated Commonwealth. Creative name, I know. The superstate with the biggest economy, the biggest population, and by far the biggest military. Like, in the lore, the FedCom basically fights all of the other great houses and pretty much wins, and they conquer a shitload of territory. So they are functionally on their way to rebuilding the Star League with this move. The only thing that stops them is the fact that the clans invade, because the clan head menace will never go away. Now, they called all the nobles and stuff, like all of the big kings and house lords and all of this shit, into a giga-big wedding where they announced the union of these two states. And at the feast after the ceremony, the groom presented his wife with all of these beautiful presents and amazing food and shit, right? And, of course, the Capellan chancellor, the head honcho dictator himself, is also there. And then, while holding eye contact with the Capellan dictator, concluded by telling his wife that his true gift was nothing less than the Capellan Confederation itself, and proclaimed that it should be conquered in her glory. Amazing. And you know what the funniest part about this was? The funniest part is that during this whole time, good old Mad Maximilian, the leader of the Capellans, was losing his fucking mind. He was going insane because he realized that every single dinner plate in the feast had the name of a Capellan world written on it with like numbers and shit. Okay? So, and as such, once it became obvious that an invasion was planned, this dude goes bonkers. He starts screaming at the announcement and trying to steal everybody's dinner plates as he's frantically running around, trying to figure out if the invasion plans are written on these plates. He's a little insane to begin with, right? But you want to...
Yeah, just a little bit.
That's not the punchline. You want to know what the punchline was?
What is the punchline?
It was total gibberish. There was no rhyme or reason.
Uh-oh.
There was no coherent anything on those plates. The groom, i.e. the Fed Son guy, he did it just to fuck with Maximilian and make him look crazy to everyone there. That was the
strong.
That was the only purpose. He set up this ridiculously elaborate thing just to fuck with the guy in charge of the Capellans. It's so funny.
Where we really just skill diffed him.
It's absolutely great. It's the poor Capellans, man. They get shafted in and out of the lore, but they deserve it because they are absolute little backstabbing monsters. Getting off that segue, let's talk about their army, the CCAF. And honestly, this is probably where a lot of people really come to like the Capellans, because there's quite a bit to dig into here and makes for like a good underdog story. So as I'm sure you're aware, the Capellans, small, thin, terminally ill, coughing baby, all of that jazz versus atomic bomb, right? But I don't think I really hammered home how bad it actually is for them. They barely have a war industry to speak of by the time 3025 rolls around. They have a grand total of 8 functional factories producing battle mechs, with an assorted few dozen producing everything else. These 8 factories, or factory worlds, whatever they were, are relatively low tech, meaning they don't produce much, and what they do make is done very slowly. At their height, before they got cut in half, they could produce around 400 battle mechs per year. And that may sound like a lot, but assuming all the other great houses produce roughly at the same rate and scaling it up to match the difference in their industry, the other great houses can produce thousands of battle mechs a year, of much, much heavier tonnage, plus all of the accompaniments to go along with it, and arguably a lot of significantly heavier firepower than the Capellans can. So the population and material shortages that the CCAF suffers are just hilarious in terms of the raw numbers disparity. And this has led to some really interesting tactics and deployments for how the mech warriors and vehicles of the Confederation actually deal with these constant encroachments on their territory. First and foremost, let's talk about what their military actually has to work with. The Capellans have a distinct separation of their military doctrine between light skirmishing units and proper battle mech divisions. The running meme of Capellan mech warriors is that, well, they run to their death in human wave-style tactics, except in battle mechs to simply die upon the Federated Sun's guns.
Truly a Russian moment.
They're not wrong. They suffer horrendous losses, especially when fighting the Federated Suns, because of the way that the Fed Suns usually dig in and just let the Capellans come to them to die. This comes from their lighter elements, like I said, and seeing as it's not really able to produce heavier mechs at large scale, the Capellans reserve those that they can make for elite and highly trained and motivated units. For a fresh recruit, you are getting a barely held together little light mech that's basically only a mech because it has legs and only comes equipped with like machine guns and a pea shooter. So good luck doing literally anything with that. Hopes and dreams, baby. That's your ride. Hopes and dreams. So they are small and hilariously undergunned, but they are very fast. So this leads many a Confederation mech warrior novice to simply being gunned down as he makes the mistake of charging the enemy and not realizing just how quickly he closes into killing range. But when they're used properly, because, you know, running in to die isn't intentional, the purpose of these lighter units is to outflank and outmaneuver the enemy. The Capellans know they can never win an outright slugging match, so what they trend towards is commando-style action, sending groups of light mechs to flank the enemy, raid their ammo supplies, destroy their logistics trains and support networks, while similarly light forces distract and tie down the enemy's main bulk. They also practice a lot of guerrilla warfare and hit-and-run tactics. The Capellans absolutely love rough terrain and cities because it allows them to rip around the corner, fire a few shells at you, and then run away before you can even react to it, especially if they can catch you in the rear arc and shoot into your much weaker rear armor. And overall, this lets the Capellans turn almost any enemy mech assault into a slow, grinding slog that inflicts disproportionate losses on the enemy. This is also supported by the heavy use of aerospace assets and long-range artillery, because when you can't fight the enemy outright, just drop explosives on them until they stop fighting back.
Did we say something about nukes?
They're coming, don't worry. You're not technically...
I can't play it yet?
No, you're not technically allowed to use nukes in Battletech by this point, so the Capellans technically don't use nukes, but we'll get into that in a minute.
Well, I think we should
legalize nuclear bombs.
You were waiting to use that soundboard.
I just added it to the server.
I hate you so much. Fair enough, legalize nuclear bomb. So, like I was saying, the Capellans love long-range firepower, and they especially love all examples of long-range fuck you from artillery and aircraft. This is mostly because they tend not to die. The Capellans love standoff munitions and long-range weapons because anything that's remotely important they can't afford to lose. So by shooting things from outside the range they can shoot back, it lets the Capellans be useful without putting their important shit in danger. At least for the actual units, the light units get dick and all, so, you know. When it does actually come to those heavier units, they have really high quality in their units. They tend to run a lot of Marauders. We did a video on those. Fantastic mech. They also use a lot of Vindicators, which both of them can mount the particle cannons like I talked about, and long-range missile launchers. And that's pretty much what all of their big, heavy-hitting units trend towards, at least for the stuff that they have to maintain. You see, the biggest advantage that the Capellans have is that they spend all of their people's food money on paying for weapons, just like North Korea. So, in Battletech, there are tons of mercenaries that you can get to do whatever you need them to do, and they come with all manner of weapons that the Capellans can't get their hands on. You might have a mercenary outfit that was originally founded in the Lyran Commonwealth, and they rock up with an entire division worth of atlases, and they're just going to park their ass on whatever you need them to and refuse to die while killing anything that gets close. You might have a mercenary company that's from the Free Worlds League, and they come with their own dropships. They might come with some other space transport. They might come with incredibly advanced electronics or really powerful PPCs and large lasers, so you put them as your fire support unit behind your main forces. They might come from the Draconis Combine and be made up of mechs that have an absolutely insane amount of firepower and armor, and thus you put them as your assault units, and you let those mercenaries soak up the damage and kill the enemy for your proper military forces following behind. So the Capellans spend a shitload of money on mercenaries to supplement literally every weakness that they have. If the audio quality seems a little bit different in this, is because I'm actually recording it after the video proper. We suffered a little bit of a issue when storage filled up by accident and the recording just stopped, so we lost about 5 minutes worth of content there, and I figured I would have to add this in, otherwise people would get mad. A huge part of why the Capellan military works so well is because they're also one of the most technologically advanced and expansive forces in the Inner Sphere, especially before the clans and all of that, Star League Mark II Electric Boogaloo stuff that happened. And the reason for is because the Capellans need force amplifiers, man. They need anything and everything they can get their hands on to make the battlefield fight easier. To that end, they were one of the first factions to not only rediscover from, the Fed Suns and the Helm Memory Core old Star League tech, but straight up reinvent some new methods of electronic warfare, stealth systems, and all of this advanced shit that allows their battle mechs, especially light mechs, which are often equipped with it, to basically remain invisible to most primitive sensors and serve as a hilariously powerful force amplification tool. They also have some ridiculous special forces. Now, I am recording this at 9 p.m. before I have to get up for 6 a.m. tomorrow in order to actually go to classes and stuff, so oof, we're gonna skim over some stuff here, and this might be a little bit inaccurate, but a whole lot of the Capellan Special Forces actually operate in battlefield and behind enemy lines, and they actually make this work by employing similar stealth systems to a lesser degree on their actual units. They can mask themselves from everything from the good old Mark I eyeball to infrared sensors and stuff, and they're trained to be some of the stealthiest and most evasion-prone units just ever. These are the kind of special forces dudes that are basically going to cha-cha slide right past the entire enemy line, sneak over to an ammo dump, and blow it up without anybody noticing. They are one of the most effective units in all of the Inner Sphere, and the Capellans put them to great use. Need a dam blown up? These are your guys. Need an ammo dump sabotaged? Absolutely. Need someone to poison the water or food supply of an enemy garrison? These are the people that are going to do it, and they are hilariously effective. So, in a relatively quick addition into the video here, which, sorry we couldn't go into more detail, but it is what it is, time is a bitch now that I have school to deal with, the Capellans have an incredibly advanced wing to their army, more than any other faction in the Inner Sphere, at least until the Fed Suns start really digging into the Helm Memory Core. And with that, back to our scheduled programming. Woo. Overall, it would be pretty cool to just leave it at that. Underdogs, scrappy fighters, all that good stuff, and it weren't for the fact that...
It would be cool to leave it at that, but we can't be having that here, so...
No, it would be cool to be happy, but we won't allow that to happen. Sorry, Capellan fans. If it weren't for the fact that they are sociopathic little shitlords that make a nation sport out of committing every offense to God imaginable, we could just leave it at that. It is extremely common for Capellan operatives to commit near constant assassinations on all of their neighbors, and from pretty much every level of society, from civilian workers to military generals to random people going about their lives, poisoning the water supply of a world, often their own when they get invaded, chemical and biological and nuclear weapons. Yes, the Capellans have agreed to stop using them under the Ares Convention, but they find ways around that, like not hitting enemy troops and instead deploying a dirty bomb upwind and waiting until the air turns to cancer, or simply hacking and disabling all communications and observations so no one has any proof. No, I promise, impartial observer, that crater isn't nuclear. It just was a very convenient asteroid impact directly on the enemy's command and control center. Plus, imagine, every war crime, the works. Disguising as the enemy in combat, wearing a red cross as a shield, false flag attacks, using human shields, they pull out all the stops on the battlefield. So on a surface level, sure, they're the scrappy underdog and have some of the most well-trained and well-motivated and very cool forces in all of Battletech, but they're also conniving little monsters that deserve an atomic punch to the nuts hard enough their kids will feel it. So, for the most part, that covers most of the Capellan Confederation in reasonable detail, significantly more than what we went over in the lore overview episode, which is our first flagship video. And there's a lot more we could cover, but I think we're just about done. I do have one last thing I want to give you, Steve, before we move on to the patron thanks. Would you like to know what we're going to do?
What are we going to do?
I'm going to give you the Capellan citizenship test.
Oh god, I'm gonna fail.
Don't worry, it's pretty easy. It's 5 questions long, okay? And the test is random. The test is randomized for every person. It's relatively easy. We need more people in to, do all the productive work and shit and, not be slaves. So the last guy, his question basically just amounted to, what's your favorite color? Do you want to be a citizen? All that kind of shit. So it should be pretty easy. All right, you ready for the first question?
Sure.
Okay, question number 1. The color 7 tastes like what?
Orange.
Incorrect. Number 2, the following sentence is false. The prior sentence is true. Which of these sentences are correct?
Yes.
Incorrect. Number 3, list every number in the Capellan phone book from the year 2983 from the throne world of Capella.
6852.
That was a single number. There are approximately 37 billion more. Have fun with that. Also, you got the first number incorrect. Wrong. Number 4, are vegans morally allowed to eat animal crackers? Incorrect. Number 5, last question. What is my favorite color?
We're gonna go, green.
Incorrect. Okay, well, you failed all the questions. Congratulations, Steve. There's a pickaxe, shovel, and identification number in the next room. Move along.
I really should have dipped there. I should have just dipped.
Well, if you want to dip, you can. I'm just going to do the patron thanks. We have a couple more. Okay, well, there he goes. That pretty much sums up everything we're doing for this video. To all of our patrons, thank you very much for your support. It is greatly appreciated. To all of the patrons at the $5 tier, a special thanks. David G, the original, Augie, 11 Bravo Crunchy, Terry Higgins, Pedro Munaz, David G, the other one, Silencer, Vox Apollyon, Phoenix, BT Legend, Electroboy 11, Logan Maynard, Mickey, David Armand, Creedome, Robin Stahapit, Fenrir Striker, Tachi Tukane, He's Deb, Pixie, Verdus, Fabric 445, Anchovy Bob, your name is disgusting, Mini Crustacean, Charles the Snep, Polly, and Eric Jones, new patrons. Thank you very much for your support. We appreciate it greatly. This has gone on for too long already. Thank you everybody for watching. Okay, goodbye.